Welcome to our podcast and videocast with Eagle football coach Beau Baldwin. It's brought to you by Cheney Federal Credit Union, serving their members' financial needs since 1951. All right, Thanksgiving over and done with. Nobody booted you aside there, and you were able to get your fellow turkey and all the trimmings, right, on Thanksgiving Day?
We were. It was nice to be able to have a couple days in that regard with Thanksgiving and just to reboot again. I mean, we just had a bye, so it's kind of a little bit odd. But our guys were able to take advantage of it again and came back rolling into town yesterday and ready to attack it again today.
You and your staff, did you go into the office on Thanksgiving Day? Did you watch film of Montana or San Diego on Thanksgiving Day? Did you do anything Eastern related on Thanksgiving Day, or did you just take the day off?
Didn't do anything, in terms of on Thanksgiving Day. Around Thanksgiving, days prior to and days after, there were, different moments where we did things in regards to whether it be Montana prep, recruiting, all of that stuff. But on Thanksgiving Day itself, not at all.
When was the last day you'd had off prior to that? July?
Yeah, it's good. Probably July. Probably right before, we got ready for that early kickoff. So yeah, it was nice.
Is it an addiction a little bit to, because you guys work 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-hour days, whatever it is, at times throughout the course of a week in the season? Is it almost become an addiction that you've got to get into the office, you've got to watch some film, you've got to look at your email, you've got to, whatever it might be?
It can be, but I think you have to be careful too. I mean, if you get into that rut, I don't think that always makes you better either, because I think there's times where you do have to reboot. There's times where you do have to refresh. There's times where you do have to find balance, whatever that is in your life, and I think in the long run it makes you better. I think it makes players better too. I mean, there's a fine line. I'll talk to guys about that. Sometimes you can start to regress a little if that's your whole, and especially if it becomes like an addiction. Like, well, if I don't, I'm not. Let's work smart. Let's work hard, but let's still work smart, and let's make sure we're peaking when we hit game time each week, in terms of the prep and what it takes. So, yes, it can be, but you try to avoid it becoming, well, the only reason I'm in there is because I'm just addicted to being in there. That can be a bad thing.
All right, let's talk Montana, because that's the opponent, second round of the FCS playoffs on Saturday. You get them here in Cheney again, second time this season. And it was the last Saturday that you played was on November 8th. You had a week off, then you played on Friday the 21st, another week off. So back again on Saturday the 6th of December. Is it a concern that you've only had one game over the last 3 weeks?
I don't think so. I mean, I think there are times where you have to caution against that with what you're doing in practice to make sure you get back into a rhythm, because a bye it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing depending on how your guys handle it and how you use it. So for us, it's more we have to really get ourselves into a rhythm during the week in practice. And when we're able to do that, and I'm confident we will, then it becomes a positive. It can become a positive thing with a freshness and where you're at, as long as you can, gain a lot of that timing back and some of those little things that maybe you can lose. But the gains that you get from, freshen up your body, preparing for an opponent a little bit longer, those sorts of things can hopefully be advantages.
Montana, you're playing them for the second time in a month, and it goes both ways here. Is it more difficult, being as how you just played them not that long ago, and more difficult for them, being as how they've just played you not that long ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a little more, obviously you're more familiar because you've seen each other up close and personal with the 14 team. I mean, you're always familiar because we play them every year. But, you don't get in situations like this very often where you play, the same 14 team twice in a year, and especially twice within 1 month. But at the end of it, once you're out there, you're playing ball. I mean, I think the thing you have to understand is, how do you prepare for it? How do you hit a challenge? I think the only people who ever use the term, well, it's tough to beat a team twice, they're using that after they lost as a crutch, and we're not going to do that. That's not our mindset. No matter what happens in terms of, on that Saturday the 6th, it comes down to what we're doing to prepare and to adjust and to make sure we're going into this game, with a great fresh plan and a great fresh attack. And we're fortunate enough to have earned home field, which is another advantage for us. So that's how we're looking at the approach of this game week, and the familiarity that we both have. I think it weighs evenly, so to speak.
Since you beat Montana on the 8th of November, they've won 3 consecutive games. They've essentially been in playoffs every week because they couldn't afford another loss. So they win at Southern Utah, they beat Montana State at home, then they win last week over San Diego. So this is a team that's coming in on a 3-game winning streak, and they're feeling pretty good about themselves.
Absolutely, and should be. I think they're playing some of their best football. Watching them, down there at Southern Utah, even better the next week against Montana State, and then they did everything they were supposed to do in their first playoff game. So I think they're improving, and they're doing some great things in terms of playing some of their best football late in the year. So it's going to be, a tremendous challenge. It's going to be a playoff game, exactly what you expect it to be, and it's going to be tough for us.
Are they doing anything differently than what they showed you in Cheney a month ago?
There's a few things. You see subtle things as coaches, maybe not from the outside world or from a fan's perspective, maybe not as noticeable. But, yeah, you see subtle things as coaches that are slightly different, from what they were doing. And again, I think you have to reboot in terms of almost, with everything you're studying your game. You got to be careful. I think the worst thing you can do is sometimes have some success and think, well, that worked, let's roll it out again. I mean, that doesn't always work, so you have to make sure you reboot and you reassess things and you look at things fresh and new again, almost like you haven't played them.
How do you go about game planning for this game since you just did play that month ago? Do you look at that game on the 8th and say, okay, this is what they did on the 8th. I think this is what they may do, and so this is how we're going to counter it. Or do you just let her rip?
Well, at the risk of a lot of people listening to exactly what we're doing, I think it's somewhere in between. I guess that's the best way I could say it. I don't think you can just study, that game film. You can't just study the film before that, but you also can't just study the 3 games after it. I think you got to put it all together. You have to put it all together and get a feel for how they've grown as a team through the year, what they're going to do, and then how you want to attack them. So yes, I think a little bit of everything that you said in terms of looking at our game, looking at their 3 games since then, looking at games prior to, and there's a lot of cut-ups for that, and they have a lot on us too. Obviously, they only have 1 more since we played. That's a little bit different. But they still have the same amount of games, minus 1, I guess, 1 less game through the course of the whole year. So there's plenty of film, there's plenty of study, and it comes down to, getting out there on that Saturday and who executes better on the field.
Jordan Johnson's one of the best quarterbacks in this league. He had some injury concerns this year. Did they kind of have some shackles on him to try to nurse him through the year, and have they taken some off from him, meaning basically read option and that kind of stuff that they've done with him in the past but that weren't doing earlier this year?
Yeah, you're seeing a little bit more of that. You saw it in some games. He got loose a little bit a couple games ago, and you definitely saw that, and he's very capable of that. I think he's playing. I think he's gutting out some things. I do. I have a ton of respect for just how gutsy he is, and I think he's playing through some pain, and that says a lot about him, and just the toughness and the character and just respect the way he plays. So I'm sure he's getting to a point where he knows it's do or die, and he feels like, let's let her rip. Whatever it is, there's no saving anymore, so to speak. And and you take that approach as you go through a year, and as a competitor like he is, I'm sure he's bringing some of that on too, is the best way I can say it. Like, yeah, I'd put it in my hands, some more than maybe we have, because we're at win or go home mode now. So you've seen a little bit more of that.
Last question. You've seen their front 7 this year. It was one of the best front 7s you've seen, and that includes the University of Washington, and so that's going to be a challenge for your offense on Saturday.
Yeah, one of the best front 7s, one of the best 11 on D, and they're really good at what they do. It showed up in some of the all-league voting and the guys that were recognized from their defense, and rightfully so. And it shows up in some of the statistics that I think are very key. What they do in the red zone is incredibly impressive on defense. What they've done, third down is impressive. What they've done to work to make teams one-dimensional and take away certain things is impressive. And it does. It starts with that front 7. Starts with a guy like Wagaman, who I think is just a tremendous player. Maybe the best in the country when it's all said and done for that voting. But even if he isn't, he's right up there. And but then it extends further than that. You start to see, well, this guy and this guy and this backer and these 3 backers that replace 3, guys that 2 of which are in the NFL. And these the secondary that plays physical. So it's a tremendous challenge what they do defensively against our offense. But we love that. We love that. We loved it the first time, and we're going to love it again this time as far as being able to attack and go after guys that we feel like are some of the best at our level.
Coach, thanks for the time. Good luck on Saturday.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks, Larry.
You betcha. That's head coach Beau Baldwin on our podcast and videocast, brought to you by Cheney Federal Credit Union.